It's time for our October Plan With Me. My folklore theme this month is all things spooky, and All Hallows Eve will create a wonderfully detailed calendar spread, cover page that's a lot more doable than it looks, and lots more. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Shayda Campbell, and on this channel, we get creative together. It's time for the October Plan With Me, so let's do a quick flip through of my September setup. I'm doing a folklore theme this year. My September theme was the language of flowers and all their secret meanings, and a lot of you commented that you really enjoyed it. It was very doable, and that's what I love to hear. I'm always trying to strike a balance between things that you find achievable and not intimidating, and then I want to stay true to my own style, of course, and expand and experiment in my own way. So this month, the folklore theme is Halloween and all the spooky season good stuff that presents such a rich folklore at this wonderful time of year when it's getting colder and the flowers are dying and the trees are losing their leaves, and we have so many stories and legends and all kinds of good stuff, the whole history of Halloween, All Hallows Eve. And I want to celebrate all that. And so what I'm going to do is do a little cute illustration inside of the O. Of course, the O is for October. And what I did is just printed a large O on my computer, and then I covered the back in graphite just with a big old pencil, taped it in, traced over it. Now I've got this perfect O right in the center of my cover page. I'll put October down below, and I'm also doing just a little bit of a border inside the O as well. And you'll see why we need that later to kind of keep the illustration separate from the pattern that we're going to do on the letter itself. So the cute little spooky illustration will be right in the center here. The O presents this perfect place to do that. So here's how it begins. Put a little circle up in the top right for a moon. And then we're just going to place two trees, one beside the moon off to the left. Maybe put 2 or 3 branches up at the top, and then we can put some oval-shaped leaves coming off of those branches, kind of framing the top of our tiny picture here. Don't overthink it, just a few little leaves. They're kind of layered in there. And then we're going to draw another tree, and this one will actually sit right in front of the moon, although we'll still see quite a bit of that moon. So for the trees, just draw like a big rectangle, one big cylinder, and they can have 2 or 3 branches up top. They're not complicated. Let's add a horizon line, like a hill just slightly off of center, a little lower than center. I put a bit of grass at the base of those 2 trees, and then we can continue framing the top of the illustration, the top of the O, with those leaves. Okay, so pretty simple so far, I think. 2 trees, they're just big rectangles or cylinders, a horizon line, and the moon. And then we do this lumpy shape, and of course that will be our ghosty, and you just do 2 long ovals for eyes and color them in. So he's got nice dark eyes, and we'll keep it a very white, stark sheet. I want to also frame the bottom of the illustration the same way we put all those leaves up at the top. I just want to place some flowers and leaves down here at the bottom. Same idea to kind of frame everything really nicely. So I'm doing a very basic floral shape, framing those flowers with lots of leaves. And then I added one more thin tree right off on the left-hand side. That completes this illustration. So grab a fine liner. I'm using a really large nib right now, the 1 millimeter, not 0.1, the 1 millimeter. And I want to start the illustration with the sky, the night sky, because I really do want this illustration to look simple, graphic, doable, and one thing I know I need is some really graphic black and white. There will be a lot of pen shading, but it can't all be shading. Some of it has to be black and some of it has to be just white, like the ghost and the moon. So I filled in what I know is going to be sky. That way I can see what is graphic black, what is graphic white right off the bat. And then I grabbed a smaller fine liner, 0.7 millimeter nib, and I started completing the rest of the contour drawing, going over the leaves, going over the trees, etc. So Halloween has a very long history, a wonderfully rich folklore. Halloween can be traced back to the ancient Celtic holiday of Samhain, which was on November 1st, and it sort of marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold time of year. And those colder months often marked a time of year when people were dying. So the eve of the new year, October 31st, became known as this night when the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On this night, ghosts of the dead could walk the earth, and people would have huge bonfires. They would wear costumes like animal skins and animal heads, tell each other's fortunes. So it was really interesting to read about the ancient traditions, also to read about the sort of sanitization of Halloween, because people didn't want it to be as spooky and scary. And then it became more of a children's holiday in the 50s when there was a big baby boom. Anyway, if you love this time of year, read a little bit about it online. I found it fascinating. These were all things that I really didn't know, and I don't know why, because I love the spooky season. If you do too, drop a spooky emoji below, and let's keep talking about what we're doing. So we've got this really nice graphic black and white illustration here. You've got the trees, the black sky, and our little friendly ghostie. And then I want to make sure that I am reflecting the leaves up at the top of the illustration with these flowers down at the base. As I said when I first put the flowers in, they're really simple. They're just, a circle for the stamen in the center, 3 petals across the top, and then 1 really short petal at the bottom to achieve a little bit of a sense of depth. If you love drawing flowers like your girl Shayda, and you love, these black and white illustrations that I do, I now have a new floral illustration e-course, everything you need to know as a beginner, and it is launching on October 1st. Go get it now because the pre-sale is on. We are doing pre-sale all through the month of September, and you can get the course for only $55. Regular price is $95. So run over to my website, ShaydaCampbell.com, or go directly to ShaydaCampbellCourses.com and check it out. So you just saw my head get right in the way there because I was trying to be as careful as I could going around not only the perimeter of the letter, but also trying to do that double border, both on the inside and the outside. That's not easy, but if you mess up and you have a white gel pen, you can kind of correct. It's sort of like having really, really precise whiteout. That's what I love about a white gel pen. And then now that all the graphic black and white stuff is in place and the contour drawing is done, we can start to add some line shading. So all I want to do on the trees is do some straight up and down lines. I'm using a smaller nib fine liner for this part. Grab like an 0.2 millimeter or 0.1 millimeter. We're also going to put some little shading, little veining lines on those leaves up top. So as I've been saying, we want the white moon, the white ghost, the black sky. I'm also going to color all the leaves of the flowers in black, and then that will allow us to also have some gray. So the trees will be gray, the leaves will be gray, and we achieve that gray just by doing line shading. So straight lines on the trees. You could do a little swirl for a knot or two. And then I want to do something here for the grass. I want to grab my teeny tiniest fine liner, the 0.05 millimeter nib. So anyway, a really, really small fine liner. And I am just doing these really tiny little rows of lines to create the look of grass. So the ghostie is standing in a grassy field here, and we want to just color it all in without going really dark. That's the thing about illustrating with fine liners like this. You can do all this wonderful line shading and all this detail, but if it's all just sort of in that gray value, the illustration will lack contrast and it's going to be hard to see all the detail that you put in. You need to achieve some of that contrast, and especially for a journal illustration, because we want this graphic cover page. So there, I've used a really tiny fine liner. I've put my grass shading in. The trees look good. I'm going to come back in with a larger fine liner, just like the 0.7 or 0.5 millimeter. And we're going to just do a little bit more grass. I'm going to use my white gel pen to connect some of these leaves, so kind of like add to the branches, the tiny branches of the tree. I'm not overthinking this. I'm just putting like the little wisps of lines, and then like it looks detailed when really some of them aren't even connected or touching anything, and that's fine. That'll be fine. I'm also going to add some stars. I don't want the night to look too starry. I want it to look like a dark night, but we will put some little dots in there. Okay, good news. Our spooky folklore October doodle is actually complete now. And if you love drawing flowers and leaves like I do, and maybe that's what you're really good at and that's what you're comfortable with, well, we're going to just add some flowers and leaves in here, and it's going to make the whole thing look even more detailed and more amazing. But really, we're just drawing like the simplest of little leaves and berries. You know, do a curved little stem or branch, add some pairs of leaves all the way down it, and then move over to somewhere else inside this O and do it again, but make it slightly different. You know, make the leaves a little pointier or a little more rounded, put a small berry or a large berry, do a little daisy, or maybe even a little rose. I kind of stuck to mostly just leaves and berries. And then one rule that I kept was I didn't want to touch the border of the O, of the letter, and I also didn't want any of the little branches and leaves to touch each other. So those were some made up rules that I followed that I think worked towards the overall aesthetic. I began by just adding a bunch on both sides. You can see I've just really done 2 designs. Then I switched to a smaller fine liner. So I started with the 0.7, then I switched to a 0.3, and I started drawing these larger leaves. They are larger in size, but because I was using, because I could get more precision with that tiny fine liner, they have more detail and they look a little more precise. I'm doing all these little veining lines, and yeah, just switching up your fine liner is a good way to switch up the look of the leaves, because some are going to be much thinner and a little more delicate. So have fun, don't overthink this part. You just did this, you know, kind of complicated ghosty illustration. Now we get to relax and enjoy all these very basic florals, but it's going to make everything look so detailed, and people are going to be like, whoa, how did you draw that? That's so cool. As you come to the end and you're filling in those last little gaps, use something like a heart shape, even an X or a small berry to fill that random tiny negative space. And then that's pretty much all done. The only thing I want to do now, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, is add some bats flying in front of that big white moon. For the bats, you just do this really loose M, like the letter M in pencil, and then go over it in pen, thickening things up a little in the middle. I'll write the month title down here below in a simple print, and she is all done. I'm really happy with the way this turned out, and I know it looks a little complicated, but I'm hoping you'll see that it comes together step by step, and I hope you'll give it a try. I'm going to flip over and do a single page calendar spread here and just do a really fun October title up above. So all I did was mark out my calendar grid in pencil, and then I go over it in fine liner by pulling that pen in towards my body. For me, that helps me keep the pen steady, so I get these straight-ish lines, but I still get that nice hand-drawn look. I'll use my white gel pen to write the days of the week, and there's my October calendar. It took 10 minutes to set up, maybe even less. Now what I want to do is come in with my pencil and just do my best, like very, very hand-drawn serif font. To do a really nice serif O, do the O circular, and then when you go to do the middle, draw an oval. And then for letters like T, you're just kind of thickening the middle. We're going to do an O again, round, and then an oval. You know, I'm just basically working stuff out here as I go in pencil. I'm not the best at hand lettering, but I do have a bit of fun with it, and I really don't get hung up on things being perfect or symmetrical, which you will see as we start to go over this month title in pen. The idea here is we're just going to create our best as we can do, hand-drawn sort of serif font. And then we're going to make it look real pretty and fancy and kind of storybook-like with a whole bunch of leaf illustrations. So once again, we're using the delicate kind of leafy floral illustration to make everything look really detailed and really fancy, but we're actually not doing that much. So I did sketch some of the leaves in pencil just to see what it looked like, to make sure it didn't look too busy and that you could still read October. And then when I was pretty sure I was going to like it, I reached for a smaller fine liner. So something like the 0.3 millimeter nib is good for this. We want to use a thicker, larger nib for the title for the October, and then a smaller nib for all the leaves, so that you can read October when it's all said and done. I just started drawing different leaves. Some are thin, some are thick, some are small, just change them up ever so slightly and go in behind all of the letters, kind of curling and having these really fluid, natural kind of vine shapes. And I didn't really overlap the letters at all. I thought that would be too difficult to read. The leaves are just sitting truly in behind. I'm going to finish up by having the leaves kind of trail off around the second O. And then to make sure that you really can read October, I'm just going to add a shadow to the upper and right-hand side of each letter. And the shadows are also a great way to fix any mistakes you might have. So if one letter got a little too big, you can kind of eat that area with the shadow. And if one area is not large enough, you can add a shadow and then use that white gel pen to help you make everything just so. But don't worry about perfection. It's so not needed to create something really pretty. I'll get rid of all my pencil, and I just love the way that looks, even though I'm not always great at hand lettering. I'll flip the page and we're going to do one more illustration and then a weekly layout. And the illustration I want to do is kind of like a large doodle, and I'm going to draw the Hamsa hand, which is a symbol of power, strength. It unites the good and dispels bad energy. So what I've done here is just drawn like a rounded rectangle right in the center, and then you kind of mark out your 4 fingers at the top of that rectangle and just draw your little thumb off to the side. So just try to draw almost like a mitt and then put the fingers up top. I know hands can be a little tricky to draw, but the beauty of this one is that it doesn't have to be perfect. And then you can put a little eye in the center there, and you want to just doodle things on this like flowers, stars, hearts. The imagery here is really fun and sort of mystical and magical, but in a really positive way, I think. And the reason I wanted to combine this with my Halloween folklore spread was simply because it's a symbol that we still use today, that we still believe has some power to protect us, even though a lot of these ancient ideas are no longer with us. Some of these symbols remain and still have meaning. So that's my connection. I'm going to put a moon and some stars surrounding the hand. I've done like a very messy hand-drawn border, just this rounded rectangle. I'm going to go over the entire contour drawing with my fine liner, and then I want to color the sky in like a really dark true black, just like we did on the cover page illustration. That true black sky is also a great way to hide your mistakes. I made the hand a little too wide. No problem. I'm just going to cover it up when I color everything in. You can use a large fine liner, like a 1 millimeter nib for this, or just switch to a black brush pen. That's probably what I should have done. Once my black background is in place, I'm going to go back to a smaller nib, something like the 0.7 or 0.5 is good, and we'll keep adding to our doodles. So I've done a lot of just like little leaves and flowers, also some moons and just like arrows and circles and stars and hearts. For these tiny doodles, I'm just thinking pretty, positive, keep it simple. So flowers and leaves are the perfect thing. And then of course we'll do the large eye right in the center there. So what are y'all gonna be for Halloween this year? I think Sully, that's my 2-year-old, wants to be a farmer. It's kind of boring, I know. Just kidding. I've just realized I think I only had 2 years of me getting to pick his costume. From now on, he'll want to be the chooser, and that's fine. He's very into wearing like a straw hat wherever he goes. So he's basically been dressing up as a farmer all summer. He gets a lot of compliments on that hat, let me tell you. So we'll do that for Halloween, most likely. Anywho, I wrote folklore, wonder, and magic down here at the bottom. For me, there is so much magic in reading about these old traditions and beliefs and the things that humanity came up with to understand things like weather patterns and death of family members and the through lines that those ancient practices have in our modern day society. We're still dressing up in costumes today. So anywho, let's just finish up by putting a weekly layout off to the right-hand side. I'm going to do a single page weekly layout. That's a little different for me. I marked out the grid of 6 squares here in pencil. Then I'm going over it with my fine liner, again, pulling that pen in towards my body. I am just doing actually 5 squares. When I go over it with pen, you'll notice I put a little calendar down in the bottom square. I put the days of the week in there. And then for the first time in this entire spread, I'm going to reach for my warm gray marker. We'll add just a little bit of color. Well, not really color. I'll even color in the eye over here just to tie both pages together. And then that's it. We're done. I kept things pretty simple. It's not a lot of spreads this month. I'm really busy at the moment finishing up the e-course actually, and I've got a couple other things going on behind the scenes, so I just didn't need a ton for my planner this month, but I was really feeling all the different illustrations and was in a very drawy mood. So if you would like to get my cover page, you don't want to draw it yourself, you can head over to Patreon. It's available for all patrons. It's just $3 a month or $33 for the year. Sign up, support the channel, and I will see you next week with a new tutorial. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.